From captive to shepherd, the journey of Joseph Boston May, narrated by his great grandson, Professor Dr. Prince Haisibo. This series would document the life and experience of Joseph Boston May, aka Ifacayeh Ojo, as documented in his handwritten autobiography. Part 1: Origins, Captivity, and Recapture. The transatlantic slave trade remains one of humanity's darkest atrocities, fracturing families, maiming bodies, and scarring souls across generations. The slave trade was the worst act against humanity in the history of the world. Many lost their lives, many were maimed, treated inhumanely, families were separated, and those who lived to tell the story bore the physical and emotional scars to their graves. However, few left trails for us to follow and discover the silver lining of their rich heritage, culture, or to trace their journeys with them. One such legendary person was Ifacayeh, aka Ojo, and finally named Joseph Boston May. As the saying goes, if you don't know where you're going, know where you come from. End of quotation. Join me in this series as we walk together in the footsteps of a 10-year-old recaptive boy who became a legend in Freetown, Sierra Leone. My name is Professor Dr. Prince Haisibo, and I am the great grandson of Joseph Boston May. I know the question will be asked, how are you related to Joseph Boston May? Joseph Boston May's sixth child and fourth son, Theobald Colinius May, gave birth to his first child and daughter, Caroline Sarah May Parker. And Caroline gave birth to a second child, a first daughter, Christy Cordelia Iyetunde May Parker Bull, who gave birth to me, her fifth child. So if you're related to me through my mother's family, the May, the Faulkners, the May Parker, the May Coles, the May Davies, the May Thorpe, and any name May, you are a direct descendant of Ifacayeh Ojo Joseph Boston May. Now let me share his story, and also in his own words. In 1817, in the Yoruba-speaking region of Iware, near the Ogun River of the southeastern Oyo Empire, now part of modern-day Nigeria, a child named Ifacayeh was born into a society rich in tradition, spirituality, and reverence for its ancestors. He was originally named Ifacayeh, and Ifa simply means covers the world, by his father, who was the Babalawo, that is a Yoruba diviner, in sacred honor of Ifa, the Yoruba deity of divinity. In Yoruba cosmology, Ifa divination guided decisions of kings, priests, and families, thus making Lonkola Ifakayeh's father both spiritually and socially influential. His father, Lankola, was the respected divine priest in the royal court of Alafin Majoto. The boy's early years were shaped by Yoruba customs and spiritual practices. Surrounded by family and rhythmic cadence of a deeply rooted cultural heritage. His mother, Manlawa, the second of three wives of Lonkola, may describe her as, quote, a woman of good constitution and a kind and peaceful disposition, end of quotation. But this tranquil world would be shattered before he reached his ninth year. By 1825, during Alafin Majoto's reign, the Oyo Empire had already begun to decline, weakened by internal strife, political fragmentation, and growing pressures of the transatlantic slave. With the disintegration of the Oyo Empire after the year 1817, Ifakayeh's father, Lonkola, moved the family to the town of Ikoto in search of greater security. But both Ikoto and Iware, along with the neighboring towns of Ikoti, Ajuron, and Ajube, were captured in the late months of 1825 by the warriors of Ojo Amipo, an independent Muslim raider who had once been the military chief to Afonja, the secessionist ruler of Ilorin. At the age of 8, Ifacayeh and most of his family were captured in a raid led by Ojo Amipo's men, and this was an era when betrayal, profit intertwined under the shadow of slavery, countless lives were violently upended. However, fast forward, at age 20 in October 1838, the once illiterate 10-year-old Recaptive penned his handwritten story, which I'll share with you, which he titled Life and Experience of Joseph Boston May. And he signed it at the end as, and I quote, a beloved son in the Lord Jesus Christ, in the colony of Sierra Leone, West Africa, October 1838. End of quotation. The boy, Ifacayeh, destined to serve the Yoruba Ifacayeh, at age 20 was serving the Lord Jesus Christ. However, before writing about this experience and his life experiences, the young Ifacayeh, who was now Joseph, recognized his shortcomings in his ability to write proper English, therefore opens his story with an apology. And I quote directly from his handwritten journal of his life. Quotation opens, "With patience have I tried to write this. It was my long desire to write something like this long ago, or as a memorandum like of my conversion and how God hath bountifully dealt with me since I learned to know myself. But I could not, able because I am not qualified to write for myself what I desire. But however, the Lord still opened my life and improved more little and little till Reverend Dove, Wesleyan missionary, with his wife and others came from England at this time, 19th November 1837, and brought some little books with him. And as I went to the mission house to be instructed, as we generally do, he read one of these little books to give to us and gave me two or three away. He then told us that it will be very good if you can make or write something like this of our conversion or our experiences. Then I exceedingly rejoiced because it was my wishes. Now, as I was about to begin it, I was greatly discouraged in many instances till I almost gave it up. Because sometimes when I think of beginning, opportunity will not allow me, and when it occurs again in my mind to begin, I do not know how to direct my English. More especially, this is what keeps me back. It discourages me till I almost entirely give it up and say it is of no use. But however, being it is my long desire, even until now, I then take a little more encouragement and endeavoring to make it so, just as it is now, not with fine and perfect English, so that you need not stop or doubt of the great errors you shall find there. Signed, Joseph B. May. Joseph Boston May opened his autobiography as follows, and I quote, "I, Joseph Boston May of the colony of Sierra Leone, was born in Akin country, a heathen nation, a country full of idolatry, and I was taken captive with my mother, a brother, and a sister. And when it came to the heir of my father, he immediately came from where he was with money, redeemed my mother, brother, and sister. The money was finished. Immediately my father went to get money in the next town to redeem me. But alas, alas." End of quotation. Alas, alas, end of quotation. The father did not make it back in time. The young boy was sold into domestic slavery. His childhood stripped away and replaced by servitude. His new enslaver kept him for nearly a year until his material circumstances declined, and he was forced to sell the child. His second enslaver held him for 3 months before taking the boy to a town 5 days away. and selling him to a merchant involved in long distance slave trade up the coast. During this period, his name changed from Ifacayeh to Ojo. In late September or early October 1826, Ifacayeh, now Ojo, and a group of other enslaved people were marched to the Lagos Lagoon and carried by canoe to Badagry. Here, it was sold to Portuguese slave traders. As you can see from the map, from Iwari to the Lagos Lagoon, the distance through the Ogun River, and from the Lagos Lagoon, the distance to Badagry by boat under difficult of condition. Ojo was still 80 years old, separated from his family. He recounts this in his life, handwritten. Joseph felt deep sorrow being sold far from his family, yet saw divine purpose unfolding to fulfill God's plan. The young Ifacayeh Ojo, now Joseph, as he writes, recounts this moment. Quotation opens. Before he came back again, that was his father, I was sold to another man and carried to a very far country, where I doubt not my father and mother will seek for me days and nights, with mourning and groaning, but still I will not be found of them. There I was sold from one place to the other, until I was gone very far with groans and tears for my parents and native's country. But thanks be to God who has brought me to a better country, to looking forward to a better country above, the heavenly Canaan. So I was carried on until I was brought to a place where I saw a large body of fresh water, which we crossed over with canoe in a few hours, and came to that country where the Portuguese are. I stopped there about a month, and then sold to the Portuguese of the same place for some articles, etc. At first, I was frightening. My heart was in great perturbation, lest I should be sold to the same Portuguese. At last, I was sold to them. I wept some with tears and groans. I was many days and nights, because I get into the hands of a nation whom I know not. Moreover, I have no hope of seeing my parents and relations no more forever. But I know not that all of us shall have to see each other's face in the morning of the resurrection. And more, I have heard that the Portuguese buy people and carry them to eat in their own country. I partly believe it because if any person or persons do not look fair, nice, and beautiful, they will not buy. They bought many of us, men, women, children. We were about 140 or more. End of quotation. Ojo's fate worsened when he was sold again, this time for transatlantic shipment. And after 3 months, confined to a barracoon, he was placed on the Brazilian ship, the Dos Amigos, in January of 1827, where he was branded with the letter T on his chest, a searing symbol of his dehumanization and commoditification that he lived with until his death. The ship was bound for Americas, where enslaved Africans labored under brutal conditions in an unfair and hostile land. So this is a symbol or representation of the barracoon, which is a house or hut made to house hundreds of slaves in deplorable conditions. And they were kept there for about a month before it was put on the Dos Amigos. This is the replica of the Dos Amigos that you see in this picture in the photo. And how the slaves were moved from up deck into the lower deck. And this figure just shows how they were laid down like sardines for a journey of 2 to 3 months. And this other picture just shows how slaves were packed and laid to make sure they have maximum capacity to go across the Atlantic Ocean. Ojo Ifacayeh Joseph May recounts this journey. Quotation opens. We stopped there about 2 months or 3, in their hands with chains round about our necks. And then we were carried and put in the vessel on the sea. I was in a most deplorable state, bitter weeping and mourning, lose all my friends, parents, and relations. And now I know not where I am going, and what shall become of poor me, Joseph. But the omniscient Jehovah. And he supports this with a verse from the Bible, who moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform, who plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. End of quotation. Yet Providence intervened. On February 8, 1828, less than a month after sailing from Badagry, when the British Royal Navy, under the command of Captain William Jardine Purchase, intercepted the Dos Amigos near the coast of Prince Island. Commanded by Jose Racmin, Ladislao, the vessel, the Dos Amigos, carried 320 enslaved Africans when it was captured by the HMS Esk. Tragically, 12 of the enslaved died during the journey, and 3 later died en route to Freetown, Sierra Leone. The boy who had once been Ifacayeh Ojo was among those rescued by the British West African Squadron, a naval force tasked with enforcing Britain's anti-slavery laws. He was brought to Freetown, Sierra Leone, a British colony established as a haven for freed and recaptured Africans at King Jimmy's Wharf. The inscription over the gate as he walked through reads, in quotation, "The Royal Hospital and Asylum for Africans rescued from slavery by British valor and philanthropy." End of quotation. There, the Sierra Leone Mixed Commission Court liberated Ifacayeh Ojo along with 307 other survivors. Ifacayeh Ojo became a freed boy with no home, no parents, no family, but with familiar faces from his enslavement and those speaking the Yoruba language. Ifacayeh Ojo Joseph May recounts this moment in his writing, open quotation. "Knoweth where he carried me to a land which flowed with gospel lights. We have wandered about and troubled in the great ocean by the hurricane, till at last my Lord and Redeemer had brought me here and landed me safe in this colony," aforesaid in the year 1828, when I was supposed to be about 9 or 10 years age. Then I exceedingly rejoice and thankful to the Lord that he has put my feet upon the shore again. End of quotation. There, Ifacayeh Ojo was officially registered as Joseph, a liberated African male. His Yoruba name Ojo was erased, replaced by a new identity shaped by colonial missionary system. As you can see from the registry of the Dos Amigos, it is clear that Ojo was on board the ship. And it clearly shows his ID number provided 10457, and the name was Ojo. He was aged approximately 9, according to the records of the Dos Amigos. He was 4'2" when he was registered on board the ship. And his trademark, the letter T, was an identifier as part of the documentation. And it reads T on the right breast and cuts all row. So he had his Yoruba mark on his face, and he had the letter T branded with a hot iron across his right breast. The inhumanity of the West. As Joseph entered into the liberated yard, it became the ward of a British missionary couple, the Bostons, who took him in and provided care, education, and a new family name. It took the name Joseph Boston. During that period, Governor Charles McCarthy of the colony of Freetown, Sierra Leone, had established a very robust educational system at Regent, which clearly stated that all children, liberated African children, should receive immediate education at Regent Village. May recounts his transition and his journey. He said, I was in the liberated yard for about 3 weeks and brought up to Regent School, a village in the mountains, by the order of the governor, to be instructed. And I was instructing till Mr. Edmund Boston, one of the church missionaries, took me to live with him, and there I received more instruction. He was a very kind man to me and loved me very much. He gave me a little Bible on the 11th of September 1828, which I got with me until this very day. Only it is now very old. I loved it well. I lived with the same man until his death in 1830. At this time, Joseph Boston May was 12 years old. His faith was beginning to shape his destiny, to be the man he was to become. Follow me in the next series, part 2, as we document his liberation, his conversion, and his ministry formation. The boy who was destined to be the Ifacayeh in the royal palace of the Alafin is now Joseph Boston. And as we continue this journey, you would get to know how he assumed the name May. Until next time, join me for part 2.